Hope does not arrive with noise. It arrives quietly. Like a thought you almost ignore. Adewale learned that early in life. Growing up in a one-room apartment off a crowded Lagos street where generators never slept and the smell of frying akara clung to the air. As a boy, he used to sit on the floor at night, back against the wall, listening to his mother tell folktales while stirring a pot of iguse on a kerosene stove. The stories were not sweet. They were lessons wrapped in pain. Men betrayed by brothers. Women abandoned after sacrifice. Villages that survived because one person refused to give up. One story stayed with him more than the others. Hope. Ayabisi would say, voice low, is like palm oil. Even when it spills, it leaves a stain. You can't erase it completely. Adewale carried that sentence into adulthood without knowing it. Would one day become the only thing keeping him alive. By 34. Life had not turned out the way he imagined, but it hadn't broken him either. He drove a ride-hailing car during the day, ran small delivery jobs at night, and saved every extra naira in a battered notebook hidden under his mattress. His dream was simple: register a logistics company, buy one small van, and stop chasing fares across the city until his bones ached. Mora, you believed in that dream once? She used to wait up for him even when he came home after midnight, dishing leftover jollof rice and pretending not to notice the exhaustion in his eyes. Their love wasn't loud, but it was steady. Built on shared struggles and whispered plans, but Lagos is not a patient city. Bills arrived faster than progress. Rent went up. Fuel prices jumped. Adewale started working longer hours, speaking less, carrying more weight on his shoulders. Hope was still alive, but it had begun to lose its voice. Then Connell returned. Connell had been Adewale's closest friend growing up. They shared slippers as children, stole mangoes together, and promised never to abandon each other. Life, however, had favored Connell differently. He left Lagos years ago and came back polished, expensive wristwatch. Confident smile, soft-spoken authority. They met by accident at a roadside suya spot one evening. Adewale? Connell had said, eyes widening with recognition. Life really brings people back. That night, Connell listened carefully as Adewale spoke about his work, his plans, his frustrations. Connell nodded, asked questions, and smiled in ways that felt reassuring. Before they parted, Connell placed a firm hand on Adewale's shoulder. You're wasting your potential, he said. Let's do something together. The words felt like an answered prayer. At home, Moreo was cautious. She asked simple questions. Who was Connell now? What kind of business? Why now? Adewale brushed them aside gently. This is opportunity, he said. We've prayed for it. Ayabisi, however, was not convinced. When Adewale mentioned Connell's name, her expression tightened. People don't return with gifts for nothing, she warned. Sometimes they return to collect debts you don't know you owe. Adewale laughed it off, but the words stayed with him longer than he admitted. Weeks later, papers were signed. Accounts opened. Promises made. Connell introduced Adewale to men who spoke in low tones and wore confidence like armor. One of them was Mr. Bonjo, a respected businessman, whose name carried weight in places Adewale had never entered. Everything moved fast. Too fast. Adewale noticed small things. Numbers that didn't balance. Calls Connell took outside. Meetings he wasn't invited to. Each time he asked, Connell smiled and said, Relax, I've got this. Hope whispered for patience. Then. One morning, Adewale woke up to a frozen bank account, a suspended driving profile, and a missed call that would change his life forever. Outside, Lagos continued breathing. Buses honked. Hawkers shouted. Somewhere, a car sizzled in hot oil. Inside Adewale's chest. Something fragile began to crack. Hope was still alive, but it had started bleeding. Trouble rarely announces itself. It creeps in, settles down, and rearranges your life while you're still trying to be polite about it. Adewale spent the first few days convincing himself everything was a misunderstanding. Banks made mistakes. Apps glitched. People returned missed calls. That was how life worked until it didn't. Each hour that passed without answers pressed harder on his chest. He walked into the bank branch just after sunrise. The air still cool, hope clutched tightly in his hand like a fragile document. The teller barely looked at him before calling a supervisor. The supervisor asked him to sit. The chair felt colder than it should have. Your account is under review, the man said carefully. There are transactions linked to an ongoing investigation. Investigation. The word tasted bitter. Adewale asked for details. None were given. He was told to wait. Outside, his phone buzzed. Ride-hailing app? Account suspended due to policy violation. By noon? His world had narrowed to unanswered calls and rising panic. He didn't pick up. That night, Moreo watched him pace the room, sweat shining on his forehead even though the fan was on full blast. She wanted to help, but fear had already crept into her voice. Did you sign anything you didn't understand? She asked. Adewale stopped pacing. The question felt like an accusation even though it wasn't meant to be. I trusted him, he said. He's my friend. Moreo nodded, but something inside her shifted. Trust was a luxury Lagos punished quickly. Over the next week, whispers started. A neighbor asked careful questions. A distant cousin sent a vague message about hearing things. Adewale noticed people watching him a little longer than usual. Then the police came. 2 officers arrived one humid afternoon, polite but firm. They asked questions. They wrote notes. They asked him to come in for clarification. Adewale complied, heart pounding, palms wet. At the station. His name was tied to words he had never imagined standing beside. Fraud, laundering, conspiracy. The amounts mentioned sounded unreal. The signatures, some looked like his. Some didn't. Connell's name appeared in passing. Never central. Mr. Banjo's name carried authority. Mentioned with caution. Adewale was released that evening. But not free. The city felt different on the way home. Louder, closer, unforgiving. He remembered walking these same streets as a boy, believing effort guaranteed reward. That belief began to crumble. At home, Adewale sat quietly, rosary in hand. She didn't ask questions. She didn't raise her voice. She only said one thing. Hope is not stubborn, she said. People are. Be careful which one you choose to be. Days stretched into weeks. Adewale stopped driving. There was nowhere to go. Money thinned. Savings disappeared into rent, food, transport to offices that offered no answers. Moreo grew quieter. She still cooked. Still cleaned. Still asked how his day was. But the warmth faded. Conversations ended early. Her phone buzzed more often. She started spending weekends at her sister's place. One night, Adewale overheard her on the phone, voice low, trembling. I'm tired, she said. I can't keep waiting for things to get better. The words sliced deeper than any accusation. Flashbacks came uninvited. Their wedding day. Her laughter. Promises whispered under cheap fairy lights. He wondered when exactly hope had begun slipping through their fingers. Then came the letter. A formal notice. Charges pending. Court date scheduled. Adewale sat on the edge of the bed, letter shaking in his hands. Outside, rain fell hard against zinc roofs, flooding the streets, washing away dirt but leaving damage behind. That night, for the first time, he wondered what life would look like if hope finally stopped trying. He didn't sleep, and somewhere in the city, Connell remained silent. The first knock came like an insult. The second sounded like a warning. By the third, Adewale already knew his life was about to split in two. It was barely past 5 in the morning. The city outside was quiet in that uneasy way Lagos gets before sunrise, when generators are still asleep and the roads feel like they're holding their breath. Adewale swung his legs off the bed, heart beating faster than it should. He didn't even make it to the door before it burst open. Uniforms, torches, hard eyes. Adewale Augenlei, one of them said. You need to come with us. Moreo screamed his name. Adewale rushed out, wrapper half tied, rosary slipping from her fingers. What is this? She cried. What has my son done? No one answered her. Cold metal wrapped around Adewale's wrists. In that moment, the room stopped feeling like home. It felt borrowed, temporary, already gone. Outside, neighbors gathered with the speed of bad news. Some stared. Some whispered. Others recorded. Adewale avoided their eyes, not out of shame, but confusion. He kept waiting for someone to say this was a mistake. No one did. At the station. The questions didn't make sense at first. They spoke of accounts he didn't control, transfers he never approved, companies he barely knew. His signature stared back at him from documents he didn't remember signing. Then, Connell's name came up. Adewale's chest tightened. "Call him," he said. "He can explain everything." The officers exchanged looks. One of them laughed quietly. "Connell?" The man said. "He's been cooperating." That was the moment something inside Adewale cracked. He spent the night on a wooden bench, eyes burning, mind racing. Memories flooded in Connell's smile, his reassuring voice. The way he said, "Trust me," like a promise sworn in blood. By morning, Adewale was charged. Outside. Life continued without him. At home, Moreo stopped answering calls. She sat on the bed staring at the wall, replaying every warning she had ignored. Her family called nonstop, fear dressing itself as advice. "This kind of case ruins women," her aunt told her. "Think of your future." Moreo didn't reply. But the seed was planted. In custody, time stretched painfully. Days bled into each other. Adewale learned the smell of despair. He learned how men slowly disappear while still breathing. He stopped asking questions because answers only brought more confusion. When Moreo finally visited, she looked like someone else. Smaller, guarded. "I spoke to a lawyer," she said. "This case is serious." "I didn't do this," Adewale replied. His voice sounded unfamiliar to his own ears. She nodded. But her silence said more than words. "They say it could take years." She whispered. "Years." The word echoed in Adewale's head long after she left. Court came quickly. Cameras flashed. Headlines were written before the judge spoke. Adewale watched strangers decide who he was without knowing his name beyond what was printed on paper. Then the final blow landed. Moreo didn't come back. Sola came instead. She moved out. Sola said softly. "She said she needs space." Adewale stared at the floor. Something deep inside him went numb. Not anger. Not sadness. Just emptiness. That night, alone among men who had also lost everything, Adewale whispered a question into the darkness. What happens when hope has nowhere left to stand? He didn't know the answer yet, but somewhere outside those walls, truth was still breathing quietly, patiently waiting for the right moment to rise. Prison does something cruel to time. Days no longer move forward. They pile on top of each other until everything feels heavy. Adewale stopped counting after the third week. Morning was only morning because the light changed. Night was night because the noise settled into something quieter and more dangerous. He shared the cell with men whose stories leaked out in fragments. Lost businesses, wrong friends, bad timing. Nobody talked about innocence anymore. That word sounded childish in a place like this. Adewale tried to stay strong. For his mother. For Sola. For the man he used to be. But strength requires fuel, and his was running out. When Ayabisi visited, she brought oranges in a nylon bag and pain hidden behind a smile. Her hands shook as she held the phone. "My son," she said, forcing calm into her voice. "God has not forgotten you." Adewale nodded, but his eyes lingered on the lines carved into her face. Stress had aged her faster than years ever could. "Eat well," she added. "Don't allow shame to enter your heart." That night, Adewale cried for the first time, not because he was locked up, but because his mother was slowly breaking outside. Then her visits stopped. At first, he assumed transport issues, or money, or exhaustion. He didn't panic until Sola came instead, her eyes red, her voice careful. "Mama collapsed during prayers," she said. "They said it's her blood pressure." Adewale's world tilted. "She's alive?" He asked quickly. "Yes," Sola replied. "But she's weak." The days that followed were unbearable. Adewale waited for updates like a man waiting for air. When news finally came, it was not relief. Ayabisi had suffered another episode. Her body was tired, her heart weaker. Adewale requested permission to see her. It took weeks to approve. The hospital visit was short and heavily guarded. Machines hummed softly. His mother lay still, eyes half open, breathing shallow. When she saw him, tears slid silently down her temples. "They wanted to break you," she whispered. "But don't let them turn you into someone else." He wanted to promise her everything: freedom, justice, success. But lies felt heavy in his mouth. That was the last time he saw her conscious. 2 nights later, A prison official called his name. "I'm sorry," the man said without looking him in the eye. The words landed slowly, painfully like something sinking. Adewale did not scream. He did not collapse. He simply sat down on the floor and stared at nothing for a long time. Something important died that night. The days after her death passed without meaning. Adewale stopped eating. He stopped speaking. He stopped caring whether morning came or not. Guards noticed, but broken men were common. No one intervened. Moreo did not call. Through Sola, Adewale learned she had filed for separation. "I don't blame her," Sola said quietly. Fear changes people. But fear felt like another betrayal. This was the moment hope almost died, not dramatically, not loudly. It faded the way light leaves a room when the generator finally shuts down. Outside prison walls, Sola refused to surrender. Grief sharpened her focus. She reviewed court files late into the night. She studied financial statements. She noticed something everyone else ignored. Connell's name disappeared, then reappeared under different companies. One night, while scrolling through Adewale's old phone backups, she found a saved voice note. It was accidental, unsent. Connell's voice. "Make sure everything points to Adewale. Banjo wants it clean." Sola's heart raced. She replayed it again and again. This wasn't justice yet, but it was a crack. And sometimes that's all truth needs. Truth is not loud at first. It clears its throat. That was how it began. Sola did not rush to the police. She didn't post online. She didn't call journalists. She had watched enough lives get destroyed by doing the right thing the wrong way. Instead, she moved quietly, like someone walking through a house where enemies were asleep. The voice note was only a spark. She needed fire. She went back to court records and matched dates with transaction trails. She traced company names to addresses that led nowhere. Empty buildings. Closed offices. Shells wearing suits. Connell's pattern became clearer the more she looked. Short appearances, quick exits. Fingerprints wiped clean. Then she took a risk. She contacted a junior accountant who once worked under Mr. Banjo's company. The man was nervous. His voice cracked when he spoke. He agreed to meet only after sunset at a roadside buca near a busy junction where faces blended and ears stayed busy. They sat across from each other over plates of hot amala and yudu. Sola said nothing at first. She let silence do the work. "I don't want trouble," the man said finally. "I don't want revenge," Sola replied. "I want truth." That word loosened something in him. He spoke of forged approvals, of pressure from above, of how Connell acted as the bridge, collecting signatures, arranging transfers, choosing the perfect fall guy. Adewale had been ideal. Clean record. No power. No protection. Mr. Banjo wanted someone invisible to carry the weight, the man said. Your brother fit. Sola recorded everything. From that moment, momentum shifted. She approached a human rights lawyer known for fighting impossible cases. He listened carefully. He didn't promise miracles. But he didn't dismiss her either. "This is dangerous," he said. "Powerful men don't fall easily." "I know," Sola replied. "But they fall eventually." Inside prison, Adewale felt the change before he understood it. Guards treated him differently. His name appeared on lists again. He was called out from meetings instead of ignored. When Sola finally visited, her eyes were alive in a way he hadn't seen in months. "Brother," she said, leaning close. "They lied. And I can prove it." Adewale wanted to believe her. But belief felt like touching fire after being burned. "Don't give yourself hope if it's not real," he said. "It's real," she replied. And they're scared. Court sessions resumed. Evidence was challenged. New names entered the room. Connell avoided eye contact. Mr. Banjo's lawyers spoke louder than necessary. Then the voice note was played. The room changed. Murmurs spread. Faces shifted. Connell went pale. Mr. Banjo's jaw tightened. For the first time, the story wobbled. The media sensed blood. Articles became cautious. Public opinion hesitated. Doubt crept into certainty. That night, Adewale slept better than he had in months. Hope stirred. Not strong. Not fearless, but alive. Outside, Moreo watched the news from her sister's living room. Adewale's name appeared again, but this time not as a villain. Regret sat heavy on her chest. She had chosen safety. Now she wondered what it had cost her. Justice did not arrive. Like a celebration. It arrived quietly. With papers signed, statements corrected, and lies collapsing under their own weight. The final court session was shorter than anyone expected. There were no dramatic speeches. No raised voices. Only facts laid bare and silence filling the spaces where arrogance once lived. Kunle broke first. When confronted with the recordings, the financial trails, and the accountant's testimony, his confidence evaporated. He stared at the floor as if it could swallow him. His voice shook when he finally spoke. "I didn't think it would go this far," he said. That was all. Mr. Banjo fought longer. Money delayed the inevitable, but it could not erase the truth. The judge's words were calm and firm. Adewale was cleared of all charges. The court acknowledged malicious intent, conspiracy, and abuse of power. When the gavel struck, Adewale didn't smile. He closed his eyes. He thought of his mother. Freedom felt heavier than chains. Outside the courtroom, the city carried on as if nothing had happened. Traffic moved. Hawkers shouted. Life refused to pause. Adewale stepped into the sunlight like a man learning how to breathe again. Sola hugged him tightly. "You came back," she whispered. He nodded. "You brought me back." The world expected celebration. But Adewale went home instead. The apartment felt empty. Ayabisi's chair remained by the window. Her scarf still hung behind the door. He touched it gently, as if she might still be there. Hope had survived, but not without scars. Moreo came 2 days later. She stood at the doorway, unsure of her place. "I'm sorry," she said. "I was afraid." Adewale looked at her for a long time. He saw the woman he loved and the woman who had walked away. Both existed. Neither could erase the other. "I forgive you," he said finally. "But forgiveness doesn't rebuild what fear destroyed." She nodded, tears falling. "Some losses don't return." In the months that followed, Adewale rebuilt quietly. He didn't chase revenge. He focused on work. With compensation and support from those who once doubted him. He registered his logistics company, small, honest, and transparent. He named it Palm Oil Ventures. When asked why, he smiled faintly because, even when it spills, he said, it leaves a mark. On the anniversary of his release, Adewale visited his mother's grave. He placed oranges beside the stone and stood in silence. "I didn't let it die," he whispered. Hope did not return as innocence. It returned as strength. Not loud, not careless, but unbreakable, and that was enough.